In mere seconds, a complete Russian infantry squad was systematically wiped off the map. No artillery barrage, no close air support, just one marksman integrated into a lethal drone surveillance net. Look at the broader Ukrainian theater. Tens of thousands of troops and armored vehicles are already destroyed. Not from heavy armor, but from cheap, low-profile tactical systems operating with dead-silent, surgical precision. I've been studying this combat footage, and what chills me isn't just the massive casualty rate, it's how they're dying. A 30-second halt in the open, a squad bunching up, a split-second hesitation under extreme combat pressure. Those tiny tactical errors turn a combat-ready platoon into a painted target. They get tracked relentlessly, until total annihilation is the only outcome. We are looking at a threat level far beyond standard infantry firefights. The kill zone doesn't start with the first gunshot anymore. It opens way earlier, usually with zero visual warning. When surveillance drones see every footstep, and software learns your patrol habits, the front line isn't dictated by raw firepower anymore. It's ruled by relentless observation and brutal timing. Stick with me here. What seems like a routine sniper hit actually exposes a terrifying evolution in how modern warfare is engineered and executed. So what went down before that trigger was ever pulled? How did a single tactical error spark a domino effect that those boots on the ground couldn't possibly stop? The exact second that Russian element halted in no man's land, the tactical advantage shifted violently against them, completely in silence. They were pushing across an exposed sector with zero defilade, probably running a heavily trafficked supply route. At that specific moment, the sector felt totally secure. To those troops, it was just a standard tactical halt to catch breath, check azimuths, and fix their spacing. Down in the dirt, things looked totally clear. No incoming fire, absolutely no enemy contacts in sight, and zero indication an ambush was being prepped. Trusting that false sense of security was their fatal error. But miles away, through high-grade thermal optics, the battle space was a different reality. Camouflage and terrain were useless. Every single rifleman was painted glowing white by their own body heat. What felt like solid cover to the naked eye was basically a neon sign under infrared. The longer they anchored in place, the sharper their grid coordinates became. As the squad bunched up, their individual thermal signatures merged together, bleeding into a massive, undeniable target that any drone operator could spot instantly. Instead of scattered skirmishers, they formed one massive, glowing beacon against the freezing Ukrainian mud. Tactically, this is huge. Constant motion breeds uncertainty, but static positions guarantee confirmation. When an assault element is pushing forward, their dynamic movement makes targeting absolute hell for snipers. But the second they halt, even for a minute, their exact grid is locked in. That static footprint gives enemy recon all the time they need to calculate and dial in. One grunt tweaked his webbing, another looked back to shout orders, and the rest huddled tight to check radios before stepping off. Every minor shift multiplied the danger. Tight spacing spiked their thermal output, and sitting still handed the sniper a perfect firing solution. What felt like solid squad discipline down below was already a fatal vulnerability from above. The topography made their tactical posture incredibly fragile, because that wide-open sector simply did not offer a single piece of hard cover to break thermal lock once the drone had it. No concrete bunkers, no reinforced trench lines, and zero heavy foliage to block the overhead feed. Scrub brush and shallow craters can't mask the intense thermal bloom of a dozen infantrymen clustered together. By that exact moment, that squad had completely crossed the fatal line. They weren't maneuvering through the battle space anymore. They had become a predictable, targetable data point inside it. Here is the most terrifying tactical takeaway: no shots had been fired yet. No artillery impacts, no sniper cracks snapping overhead, and absolutely zero visual indicators they were compromised. That dead silence just reinforced their fatal assumption that the halt was secure. It kept them standing out in the open for those few critical, unforgiving seconds. And in this war, a few seconds is all it takes to finalize a firing solution. You and I have to understand modern combat. Survival isn't just dodging bullets anymore. It's about outsmarting the sensors. Because the second an element gets painted like this, the ensuing slaughter doesn't start with chaos. It starts with brutal, calculated precision. Listen, by the time that first shot rings out, The entire tactical outcome is already set in stone during the quiet moments. So, the real question isn't how hard a squad fights when contact happens. It's whether they can survive without becoming a primary target before combat even kicks off. On today's front lines, hostile sensors watch constantly, mapping enemy troop patterns over time. Now, even stopping for a breather triggers deadly consequences far beyond one simple choice. You have to ask yourself, is taking a 5-second halt ever safe when surveillance drones hold the sky? This firefight started way before the Russian infantry pushed out into the open. That approach route had been under heavy Ukrainian surveillance for weeks. High above them, Ukrainian recon drones were silently tracking troop movements down that exact corridor. They didn't call in artillery immediately. Instead of just reacting, they watched to see exactly how different units navigated that kill zone over time. These operators were studying routines, tracking exactly where infantry slowed down, where they bunched up, and how long they rested before advancing. Tactical surveillance like this ignores speed and surprise. It runs entirely on patience. Combat behavior patterns only expose themselves after multiple units pass. Day after day, that dirt road stopped being just terrain. It transformed into a highly predictable map of human instinct. Specific coordinates became famous to drone teams not for their geography, but for the fatal mistakes made there. That intel generates a terrifying battlefield advantage, one completely separate from pure artillery firepower. When this Russian squad pushed into that sector, they weren't clearing an unknown gray zone. They walked into a combat sequence the Ukrainians had already memorized. From the squad's perspective, they were making basic survival decisions, adjusting pace, keeping unit cohesion, and using cover as best they could. But from the sky, those survival instincts matched a deadly, familiar script, erasing all guesswork up top. This is where the grim reality of modern warfare shifts. Spotting the enemy no longer requires one massive blunder. It's about recording small, repetitive troop movements that feel totally harmless in the moment. Dropping your pace, rallying the squad, or shifting your formation slightly, it all gets logged, compared, and fed into a larger cycle of tactical behavior. Once confirmed, your next move is predicted before you make it. The drone operator doesn't need to scramble immediately. Their mission isn't firing the first shot. It is confirming that the enemy repeats the same errors under similar conditions. Look at this footage. These Russian troops weren't being hunted in any traditional military sense. They were being stalked through a kill chain that had already calculated their maneuvers long before their boots hit dirt. That is exactly why all remained quiet when they crossed the open field. The lethal heavy lifting was finished earlier. The recon spotters weren't waiting for random movement. They wanted proof that the same fatal behavior was happening again, right on schedule. Once that intel was locked in, the chaotic fog of war was practically erased. In that chilling moment, combat stopped being a reaction to a target. It became the cold execution of a pre-planned firing sequence. The second that infantry group halted to catch their breath, they lost all tactical freedom. They walked right into an established kill zone pattern, making their destruction incredibly simple to predict. No incoming whistle, no buzzing quadcopter, no warning at all that their final steps were being actively processed. When the order finally came to fire, it wasn't triggered by panic, but certainty. The strike didn't begin the battle. It simply proved this engagement was rigged against them from the start. So, for military planners today, the focus isn't on the first muzzle flash. It's realizing how much blood is spilled before anyone pulls a trigger. You and I have to ask ourselves, when drones memorize every move, has persistent surveillance finally become deadlier than raw artillery? That opening blast did more than inflict casualties. It instantly shattered the Russian unit's capacity to fight as a cohesive squad. Up until then, the assault team was functioning effectively, maintaining situational awareness, steady pace, and basic tactical discipline. But the second that high-explosive round detonated, that discipline evaporated completely. What followed wasn't a coordinated tactical response to contact, but a rapid breakdown into isolated, desperate survival choices. Watch this troop hit the dirt, completely clueless if that incoming fire was close or miles away. Another guy scrambles forward, then stalls, hoping sheer momentum might somehow fix this tactical nightmare. A third target scans for the muzzle flash, exposing his entire torso in the open field instead of maneuvering to hard cover. In mere seconds, we watch this squad lose all cohesion, instantly degrading into terrified, isolated individuals trapped under heavy fire. That psychological shift is deadlier than the first casualty. The real devastation here isn't just physical blood loss, it is a total structural collapse. Once panic overwrites tactical training, these soldiers abandon their mission parameters, reacting purely on terror. There is zero command and control left here. Situational awareness drops to zero. As every man frantically tries to save his own skin, the squad's collective defense completely falls apart on the battlefield. You and I are witnessing the exact moment a minor skirmish becomes a total slaughter. This sharpshooter did not have to empty his magazine into the patrol to trigger this chaos. A single, devastating kinetic strike forced a brutal chain reaction. That bleeding casualty instantly generated panic. Not knowing the exact sniper hide just multiplied the crippling confusion among the survivors. The dead silence between trigger pulls is psychological warfare. Nobody out there knows if the next lethal round is flying now or in a minute. That raw dread carries massive weight in modern combat zones. When infantrymen cannot pinpoint an incoming threat, animal survival instincts violently override their tactical discipline. These fighters stop calculating risk like professionals and just wildly react to whatever terrifies them in that exact second. One guy crawls, another just freezes. A medic might try rushing to the casualty, while his buddy decides sprinting away is the only way to stay alive. These are basic human reflexes, but they rip the squad apart right when they need interlocking fire. This is exactly why opening shots are so completely devastating on today's front lines. It is not just about deleting a single enemy asset. It shatters the command loop of the entire patrol. Historically, overwhelming combat effectiveness relied on massive, deafening volumes of artillery fire. Today, surgical precision triggers catastrophic tactical disruption. This marksman isn't just dropping bodies. He is forcing these hostiles to expose fatal weaknesses through sheer panic. Every ticking second post-impact is an active weapon. Let's look at this footage. These active hostiles are visibly broadcasting terror, hesitation, and absolute disarray right now. From here on out, basic battlefield maneuvers become nearly impossible. Laying down suppressing fire is impossible without clear visuals. Bounding forward together fails when everyone scatters blindly. Trying to secure a rally point eats up the clock. And precious time is exactly what this sniper just stole. The platoon is physically there, but their tactical framework is dissolving. This proves why that initial engagement is far more lethal than civilian observers ever realize. This is not just the initial breaking of enemy contact. It is the brutal flashpoint where one operator holds absolute dominance and the enemy squad completely breaks. So I ask you, what is deadlier in this combat theater? Dropping a single grunt or destroying a whole platoon's ability to wage organized warfare? This flat, open terrain turns every single movement into a death sentence. And that is exactly what makes this ongoing firefight so incredibly hostile. Once that bullet shattered their discipline, these Russian troops were facing something far worse than just adrenaline and blind panic. They found themselves pinned down in a kill box, with absolutely zero defilade or hard cover. That total lack of concealment turned every twitch into a gamble. The hostile who hit the deck probably thought hugging the dirt would keep him breathing another minute. Out in an exposed combat zone, going prone is pure instinct. You try to shrink your silhouette and melt right into the blasted soil. But under military-grade thermal optics, staying still won't save you. It paints a massive target. A frightened soldier pressed against the cold earth glows like a beacon, and the second that movement dies, the sniper gets a rock-solid lock on the reticle. We see another hostile sprint hard, desperately praying his legs could break contact and pull him clear of the fatal funnel. But out here in no man's land, sprinting does more than just build distance. It traces a highly visible vector of motion. Let's break this down. A hostile sprinting across bare terrain feeds an observer pure intel regarding direction, pace, and intent. The harder he runs, the clearer his vector becomes. And once a route is established, it gets dialed in. Watch this third combatant hesitate. He turns his focus toward the likely sniper position instead of committing to a hard exfil. Tactically, that instinct makes sense. Pinpointing an incoming threat feels absolutely mandatory before making your next move under fire. But in this kill zone, hitting the brakes or standing still to hunt for the shooter just makes you a static target. Trying to regain situational awareness suddenly becomes a fatal tactical error. This is exactly what makes this combat footage so ruthless. There were zero good options left in the dirt. As the Russian squad scattered, the baseline threat didn't just vanish. It simply evolved. Moments prior, bunching up painted them as one massive, glowing thermal cluster for the optics. Now, breaking formation left every surviving rifleman horribly exposed as an isolated target. Instead of tracking one blob, the sniper could lock onto isolated hostiles, each reacting differently, each bleeding fresh targeting data through their sheer panic and positioning. That is the absolute savagery of modern drone-assisted warfare. Scattering sounds like basic survival, but in the wrong sector, dispersion just breaks a shattered platoon into smaller tactical problems, waiting to be eliminated sequentially. These troops were no longer concealing each other's desperate moves. Every single guy was broadcasting his grid coordinates through raw motion, stressed posture, and fatal hesitation. The complete lack of hard cover locked the trap perfectly. Zero concrete to break line of sight, no defensive trenches to mask their chaotic movement, and absolutely no shadows dense enough to mask a thermal signature. Shallow grass and muddy craters might offer a mental safety net, but they fail to scrub the heat signature of a panicked soldier trapped under surveillance. The ground looked bare because it was entirely compromised. Once troops took fire, that lethal reality became inescapable. For Ukrainian Overwatch, every flinch mapped the battlefield. A dropped hostile flagged a precise coordinate. Sprints exposed exfil routes. A frozen soldier confirmed mass confusion. Shifting stances broadcasted extreme combat stress. What these guys felt as frantic, life-or-death survival choices, the sniper detail analyzed as raw targeting data. You and I have to ask, pinned in that exact sector, do you haul gear and run, or freeze and pray the dirt itself grants you a fraction of mercy? This firefight proves modern combat isn't just dominated by whoever throws down the heaviest suppressing fire. It's controlled by who maintains overwatch longer, reacts quicker, and punishes mistakes with surgical precision. The chaos following that initial sniper round perfectly illustrates this brutal shift. A handful of Russian infantry refused to die in the open. Several broke contact from the kill zone and pushed hard toward the nearest wooded perimeter, assuming the dense timber would finally provide the physical concealment they desperately lacked out in the dirt. Down in the mud, that tactical call tracked. Heavy foliage means armor against bullets, scrambled sight lines, and a ticket out. But the lethality did not stop at the edge of that tree line. The threat evolved and tracked them straight inside. This highlights where Ukrainian combined arms flexibility actually outshines the sniper rifle. Marksmen triggered mass panic and flushed them out, but overhead drone surveillance sustained the assault during exfil. Rather than dropping the targets in the heavy brush, Ukrainian operators smoothly passed the baton from ground-level sniper fire to relentless aerial drone tracking. That seamless handoff rapidly converts a brief skirmish into a fully executed kill chain. A combatant might dodge the rifle, yet stay entirely locked inside the kill box. Check out this first hostile, clearly wounded or gassed. He hits a patch of light concealment, desperately burying himself under broken branches and thick brush. He finally got off the exposed plane, and from his limited perspective down there, he probably thought the nightmare was over. The dirt offered deep shadows, deadwood, and just enough clutter to break his silhouette from a ground-level view. But from up high, the drone operator held the ultimate high ground and unlimited patience. Micro shifts in stance, rustling leaves, and the physical trail smashed through the thicket totally compromised his temporary bunker. And that drone operator absolutely refused to rush the strike. The drone held its vector, moving slow until the target was locked. When that kill shot finally hit, it wasn't because this Russian infantryman carelessly broke his concealment. The operator had already boxed him into a single, fatal pocket of hard cover. Let's analyze a second, far more brutal engagement. We are tracking another Russian hostile pushing deeper into the heavy timber, desperately trying to relocate instead of holding position. Tactically, that call felt smart in the moment. Moving under a thick canopy always feels safer than sprinting across a hot, exposed kill zone. But the aerial asset tracked his vector from above. The operator read his thermal signature through broken brush and snapped branches. Our intel shows the target reaching a small rally point near the tree line. He found a shallow crater, a hasty fighting position, where he hoped to catch his breath. Instead, that fatal hesitation gave our drone operator hard visual confirmation. The bird dropped its attack angle, threaded right through the branches, and detonated before the hostile could even flinch. Right there, the dense forest offered zero protection. It became his absolute cage. This intel confirms the real lethality here isn't one weapon system. It is seamless tactical coordination that punishes every single phase of enemy movement. Snipers shatter enemy formations in the open. Loitering munitions execute them in the brush. Forward observers and persistent aerial surveillance link the battlespace, ensuring targets are never dropped when the terrain shifts. Fire teams can execute violently within this loop. They do not wait for higher command once the enemy's panic response is mapped and anticipated. Is this ruthless precision exactly where modern warfare is heading? A battle space where reaching hard cover no longer guarantees your survival? What you and I are watching isn't just one localized tactical victory. It is a massive red flag signaling the future of this brutal conflict. This Russian squad wasn't wiped out by heavy artillery fire or massed armor, or heavy strategic airstrikes. They were dismantled piece by piece, first by drone recon, then a sniper's shot, and finally by their own sheer panic under intense pressure. Even hostiles hitting the tree line never truly escaped. The drone swarm tracked them down, turning supposed sanctuary into just another bloody kill zone. That is the terrifying tactical takeaway today. In modern combat, a frontline unit can be completely neutralized before they even realize the ambush has begun. If these battlefield tactics escalate, tomorrow's wars won't be defined by massive armored pushes. They will be won by silent detection, relentless tracking, and split-second violence that leaves zero survival window. The critical intel question is whether global militaries can adapt to this lethal reality, or if outdated doctrines will keep driving infantry into meat grinders on battlefields that are increasingly impossible to read and survive. What are we going to see deployed next? If this after-action report helped you decode the battle space, hit that like button, share the intel, and subscribe to Military Force for the hardest frontline analysis available.